The film opens with a photograph and video montage showing the existence of a Korean-American family known as the Kims, David Kim, his better half Pam, and their young little girl Margot. Margot took up an interest in piano examples from early on. Pam was subsequently determined to have lymphoma that went into reduction, yet she later encountered a backslide. David and Margot remained close by until she died in 2015. In the present, David scolds Margot for not making a garbage run. She says she will do it when she returns from a review bunch meeting. David then, at that point, converses with his sibling Peter Kim, who is attempting to make a gumbo formula that Pam used to make. David sends him an image of the formula and afterward invests in some opportunity to watch a video of Pam telling a youthful Margot the best way to make the gumbo. That evening, as David is dozing, he misses 2 calls from Margot. David messages Margot again for not taking out the trash. Hours after the fact, he actually hasn't heard from her. After work, he attempts to contact Margot, but she never answers her telephone. He figures she may be at a piano illustration, so he calls the piano educator, just to find that Margot dropped her examples a half year sooner, and that implies that she has been taking the $100 greenbacks that he has left her for herself. David begins to stress. David looks into the quantities of Margot's schoolmates from Pam's old contacts list. He calls the home of Margot's beloved companion Isaac, and he addresses Isaac's mom, who tells David that Isaac and his companions went out traveling to the mountains, so she accepts that Margot could accompany them. David figures out how to reach out to Isaac, who lets him know that Margot isn't with them and that he had welcomed her, yet she declined. David calls the police and he addresses the prestigious detective Rosemary Vick, who is relegated to the situation. She advises David to reach out to any individual who might have been near Margot or know where she was most recently seen. David goes through Margot's PC and observes that every last bit of her online media accounts is private. He signs into her Facebook profile utilizing Pam's old email address, and he starts to contact Margot's schoolmates. The vast majority of them have vindications from the night that Margot disappeared, and others say that Margot was normally peaceful and far off. David arranges an outline to monitor who he has addressed with the goal that he can show Vic. Vic later shows David traffic cam film showing Margot avoiding a corner store and heading with regards to the town. She likewise sends him a phony ID that Margot seems to have utilized under the name Jen Yun. This, combined with the way that David observed Margot's Venmo exchanges having taken out $2,500, drives Vic to propose that Margot fled. Developing tired and progressively apprehensive, David then, at that point, goes over the site ucast where Margot left live web-based recordings. He goes through the saved recordings to see that Margot would converse with somebody named Hannah, whose username was fish_n_chips. Hannah likewise had a wiped-out mother and would relate with Margot. David then, at that point, sees one of the recordings is of Margot at a lake, which matches an image she presented on her Tumblr account. It's Lake Barbosa, where Margot got a kick out of the chance to go to unwind. David observes the bearings from the place where Margot was most recently seen, and he takes off. David calls Vic in the night once he gets to the lake. He observes a Pokeball keychain that had a place with Margot, affirming that Margot was there and that she didn't flee. In the first part of the day, specialists fish Margot's vehicle out of the lake. An envelope with $2,500 is there, yet Margot isn't toward the front of the storage compartment. A touch of blood is spotted on the dashboard. Fresh insight about Margot's vanishing spreads, prompting an inquiry party scouring the forest for her. It turns into a moving point, for certain individuals sharing adoration and expectation for Margot to return, while others mock the circumstance and blame David for being engaged with her vanishing. One of Margot's classmates, Derek Ellis, who is, for the absence of a superior term, a douche, jokes that Margot is with him and that he's her pimp. David discovers he's at the close-by cinema after monitoring Facebook, and he goes to stand up to him, prompting David to beat Derek up and break his jaw, which benefactors record on their telephones. Vic advises David to remain no longer associated with this issue along these lines. David glances through the photographs of the site where Margot's vehicle was found. After looking into it further, he sees a hockey hoodie in the passenger seat of the vehicle that he perceives as having a place with Peter. David glances through Margot's messages among her and Peter, which suggests that they have been accomplishing something that Peter realizes David would kill him for. David visits Peter and sets up cameras in his home to give and have an admission a chance of him. David asked Peter when he last saw Margot, and he seems to avoid the inquiry. David then, at that point, assaults Peter until he comes clean, and Peter concedes that he and Margot were partaking in weed. She had gotten him at one point and needed to attempt it, so they stayed quiet about it from David. Peter calls attention to that he was the one in particular who paid attention to her when she discussed her mom's passing, since David had tried not to converse with her regarding it. David then, at that point, gets a call from Vic. However, he misses it and simply hears her voice message. Vic lets him know that they got a suspect, and David separates crying as he pays attention to the phone message. The news reports that an ex-convict, Randy Chertoff, has clearly admitted to killing Margot before ending it all. A video of his admission is shown, in which he mournfully apologizes for how he professes to have treated her. David is sent commemorations and sympathies for the news. David gets an email from a dedication administration requesting recordings and pictures of Margot that he might want to share for her forthcoming remembrance. After picking every one of the documents that he needs to share, he sees an image on the assistant's site that looks recognizable. It gives off an impression of being Hannah, aka fish_n_chips. He looks through her picture on Google and notification that the young lady in the image is some sort of list model. David calls the organization that Hannah works for, and he addresses her, yet she has no clue about who Margot is for sure UCast is. David attempts to call Vic to explore further, since this doesn't make any sense for him. He rather addresses a lady from the police headquarters that lets him know that Vic isn't there, and she neglects it that Vic chipped in for the case as opposed to being relegated as he had been persuaded to think. David does somewhat more research and sees an article of Vic with development laborers, and one of them is Randy. With this data, David carries a gathering of cops to Margot's remembrance, and Vic is captured. 7 days after Vic's capture, we see her being examined. She admits that all that she did was a result of a mix-up that her child Robert had made. It just so happens, Robert had been infatuated with Margot for a really long time, and he feline fished her as fish_n_chips, utilizing Hannah's image as his own and thinking of this phony persona in history for quite a long time. Margot had taken out the $2,500 to assist with what she accepted was his debilitated mother's medical clinic bills. At the point when Robert observed her partaking in weed at the lake, he scared her and she ran. Robert pursued her, and she began hitting him justifiably, and he responded by pushing her down the gorge. Robert called Vic to freeze, and she instructed him not to do anything. She made up everything to distract David, including making a phony ID for Margot, making it seem as though her body was mysteriously absent, and in any event, setting Randy up to make a misleading admission and having him killed. Vic then, at that point, calls attention to that there is plausible that Margot endures because there was a tempest 2 days after she disappeared, so she could not have possibly been completely dried out. Robert is likewise arrested after this admission. A salvage group goes down to the gorge where Margot fell. From a live news chopper, we see the heroes raising a body bushel with Margot inside. David heads toward check whether Margot is okay. It's presently months after the fact. We see a message trailed by an image of David with Margot in a wheelchair at the clinic, affirming that she is without a doubt alive. She is pausing and invigorating to see whether she got into a music center that she had applied to. David messages her telling her that he is pleased with her and that her mother would be as well. To watch more video like this, click on the videos on your screen, and don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. And at last I will say stay safe and stay healthy. See you next videos.